And the ghost.
Radio Free Innsmouth, episode 385. Again, we're going on a bit of a deviation from the death metal explosion that has recently overtaken this channel.
나랑 룸서비스를 영어로 시켜먹기였는데
Yeah, believe me, I get it. The fan base, such as it is, wants to hear about the NS black metal stuff. But if I was in the business of internet popularity, I probably wouldn't be out here doing multi-part documentaries about Branicald featuring K-pop idols in corpse paint and Trailer Park Boys jokes.
Knock, knock, Randy. Who's there, Randy?
Plus, can you really blame me when you got stuff like this happening? I mean, that's basically maximum.
Dank.
I don't understand how anybody could hate that kind of stuff. But I guess it's good to take a break from that sort of stuff. So you're actually getting a promised sequel to an episode from 5 years ago about one of my all-time favorite bands, Fate's Warning. Hell, someday maybe I'll actually make a part 2 or even a part 3 for the Forgotten Woods episode.
어플로 주문을 하던가?
Yeah. Where's Lucifusion Part 3? About that. That actually was going to come out a long time ago, but I went back and listened to a lot of that later Lucifusion stuff, and I ended up not liking it as much as I remembered. So unless my brain chemistry is dramatically altered, that episode's probably not going to happen.
Oops.
I'm sure all 5 of you are very upset with me concerning that. Anyways, the initial Fates Warning episode was supposed to cover all their 80s stuff. It ended up generally just being about their 4th album, No Exit, which is definitely one of the greatest albums of all time, and it features one of my favorite riffs of all time on the Ivory Gate of Dreams Part 7, Acquiescence. To start out,
It goes.
which is great, but after that,
It goes.
and then finally,
It goes.
and it's basically a perfect riff, perfect sort of melancholic heavy metal melody. Sakis Tolis, Jesper Stromblad, and Jon Notweiter over here salivating, going like, why couldn't I written a riff like that? And the way they use it in the song is just genius. But I mean, you go back to episode 105 of Radio Free Innsmouth, you could basically hear me talk about that for 15 minutes. Point is, No Exit's an amazing album. And depending on when you ask me, it might be my favorite Fates Warning album. But then there's others days you ask me, what's your favorite Fates Warning album? It's going to be one of the 3 before it. The John Arch on vocals era of Fates Warning, which I won't really say is underrated, because those 3 albums, particularly the second and the third one, have an incredibly dedicated fan base. But they definitely aren't name-checked as often as they should be by the metal public writ large. And I feel like if more power metal had taken after these particular Fates Warning albums, listen, I love power metal, but the genre would be in a better place. And yet at the same time, there's really nothing out there that sounds like this era of Fates Warning. Maybe some of the weirder US bands like Sacred Oath or Slaughter Extroyes or Heir Apparent, or even parts of the early Warlord material.
What is all of this all over your...
That's grease from alcohol.
Nope, not that Warlord. Those bands might approximate some of the same atmosphere, but they don't really hit that same specific niche. Spiritually, the closest band of this era of Fates Warning is actually probably Manila Road, but even then, they sound way different. If you're going to get into the John Arch on vocals era of Fates Warning, honestly, the best way to do it might just be to jump right in at the craziest album, Awaken the Guardian, because that's how I did it way back when. Got the box set at Best Buy. This was so long ago. When I brought it home, my mom thought it was a Game Boy Advance game because of all the colors and the shape of the box, general size of the whole thing. But nope, it's actually just a power metal classic, typified by my personal favorite track on the album, Fata Morgana, which kicks off with a perfectly done, dark harmonized lead over very foggy, misty kind of rhythm guitars, sort of unique to this genre of power metal from the 80s in the United States. But as soon as you get out of that harmony, you hear they're starting to do all sorts of weird narrative things. The guitar parts are a lot more morphic and slippery than is typical for the genre. And then when those vocals kick in, you know you're really in for some strange stuff. Because while John Arch has notes of Bruce Dickinson in his sound, the way that he follows the music is completely different than any other power metal vocalist I've I've ever heard. It might seem kind of all over the place and nonsensical at points when you first hear it, but when you really give it a chance to pay attention, you realize how genius these melodic vocal lines are. He's like a third guitar more than he's like a standard catchy chorus kind of guy. In terms of melodic structuring, his vocal lines, they almost feel like the really floaty, shifty, sort of indistinct but incredibly complex riffs you might hear on a longer Burzum song, but it's all just being done with his voice, and it matches the very liquid flow that these simultaneously percussive and melodic riffs have. I know there's a pretty big contingent of metalheads out there that are always going to say this guy's a shitty vocalist. To them, I say,
don't cover that line. I'll slap the taste out of your mouth.
John Arch is one of the greatest heavy metal vocalists of all time. To paraphrase Mirai from Psy talking about Hail Horror Hail, if you think his vocals are strange, it isn't because they are in themselves strange, but because your conscious self is ill-equipped to comprehend the sounds that John Arch is producing. And thank God he was there to produce these sounds on those first three Fates Warning albums. The first of which, 1984's Night on Brocken, is pretty widely hated, not only by the metal public, but also by the band themselves later on, or at least Jim Mateos. But you know something? I don't really like later Fates Warning that much. Pretty much everything post No Exit, I mean, I guess Perfect Symmetry is alright, but it ain't got nothing on those first four Fates Warning albums. And Night on Brocken is much more in line with my own peculiar tastes. Apparently, King Fowley from Deceased is also a big fan of this particular album, and it definitely sounds like something he'd be into. If you're into early Fates Warning, yeah, it's not as good as Spectre Within or Awaken the Guardian, but I wouldn't skip it. It's very much a primitive, occult, dark power metal sort of album, but it has the nascent elements of progressive songwriting that would come to define the band later on. It actually has a lot more in common with Merciful Fate than the Iron Maiden ripoff it's usually accused of being, at least to my ears. John Arch's vocals aren't nearly as nuts as they would get later on, but they're still well done. And in fact, they might be more suitable for the ears of those that can't handle some of the wackiness he was bringing later on. But he still maintains that sort of dark, mysterious feeling that's common to everything he's ever sung on. This particular song right here, the title track, definitely the most complex song on the album, the one with the least traditional songwriting structure. The whole sort of second half to last third of the song kind of goes on this whole musical journey, somewhat separate from the proto-thrash of the beginning of the song. Very much a Walpurgis Night style mystical ritual. And it is during this latter portion of the song that not only do the riffs start to approach what Fates Warning would become known for later on, but also John Arch's vocals sounding much more like he does on Spectre Within and Awaken the Guardian. Like right here. That's a fucking John Arch layered vocal line if I ever heard one. Here it comes again. Almost got kind of a medieval, ancient music sort of feeling to it. Very much enhanced by the slow-burning, melancholic lead guitar. Fates Warning, even on their later albums that I'm not as into, the ones that are a little too Dream Theater-y for me, they always got sick fucking solos. If Night on Brocken was like a one-off album, like if this was the only Fates Warning album, it'd probably be held in pretty high regard by fans of more obscure early power metal and speed metal from the US. But when you get to their second album, The Spectre Within, this is when they turn into a masterpiece, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, greatest band of all time type project. On this album, the band are very stately and poised sounding, while also being incredibly adventurous with their song structure. Like right here, you got these riffs that are palm-muted and heavy, but also very floaty, ethereal, and full sounding. And then when the heaviness picks up, it actually ventures into a sort of thrash metal territory, but not thrash like anyone else I've ever heard do it. It's got a lot of that same sort of atmosphere that I've come to expect from post-Ozzy Black Sabbath, specifically the Tony Martin era, which actually came out after this album, showing off how ahead of their time Fates Warning were. And of course, it's John Arch on vocals. The vocals are going to be fucking nuts. Like, I don't know who else does that the same way that he does. This combo of almost spoken word, almost kind of thrash, but then these, like, melodic, blossoming, layered sections. Then they bring back that time motif from the beginning of the song to lead us into some incredibly well done, melancholic, again, lead guitar. Calling this kind of stuff a solo almost feels diminishing to it, given how integral it is to the song's overall structure. And then when the vocals come back in, they're fucking crazy. Going on over the floaty chords and then tying into the palm muted phrase at the end of that riff sequence. And then here's a fucking solo, all right? That's some fucking good shit. Highly emotive, perfect power metal. I know there's a lot of people out there that are really into stuff like Queensryche. Ain't got shit on the level of emotion that Fate's Warning is bringing. Normally, I'm not one of these guys saying such and such band sends other such and such band home on a stretcher. Mostly because that doesn't make any fucking sense. You don't go home in the ambulance. It takes you to the damn hospital, stupid. But for whatever reason, back in the 80s, Fate's Warning and Queensryche were seen as rivals. And the fact that the fucking Jet City Woman band won out in the end, that's just some fucking poserific bullshit. Spectre Within is essentially just 10 out of 10 tracks, the whole album. You could probably make a good case for any of them being your favorite. Got the really dark epic power metal of Orphan Gypsy, the speed metal goodness of Without a Trace, Pirates of the Underground, the real epic esoteric stuff like Kyrie Eleison or Epitaph. My personal favorite song, gotta go with The Apparition, one of the best songs of all time. Starts off with a super sick intro. Like, what a sick set of riffs, and it all ends on this really smooth-sounding cosmic chord. Right there. Then it goes into this epic mid-paced, thrashy sort of territory that proceeds to slow down into some real doomy shit, giving John Arch a chance to do some of that dank John Arch shit.
Nobody does it better.
And the doomy lead guitar, because you gotta have that when you're going into real outer space territory with a song like this. Because this one, it's only 6 minutes long, but it feels longer in a good way. The way that it's structured really makes it feel like you're going on a journey. There's sort of a chorus. I say sort of because, again, this song is structured in such a non-traditional fashion. And this chorus, such as it is, it's fucking sick.
It goes, it goes, it goes, it goes.
Absolute banger. But again, the second half of the song, they just go fucking bonkers. It almost switches genres from this like doom thrash atmospheric sort of thing to a total neoclassical speed metal ripper. And all of this happens after it comes out of a monstrous fucking thrash break. I'm sorry, Nuclear Assault who? SOD what? Where did these fucking power metal learn to fucking thrash like this? And watch when the vocals kick in right here. It gets real fucking strange. Like, this Arch character's sense of rhythm. Nobody else has got anything like this shit. This is like technical power metal or something. And then it seamlessly shifts into a much more occult speed metal sort of mode. Even got you some of them Agent Steel style screams. And then the emotional intensity kicks up. I would highly recommend looking up the lyrics to this song because they're fucking amazing. This era of Fate's Warning in general just has dank fucking lyrics. But in this song in particular, they're incredibly well done. Just this real existential exploration of mortality. And this part coming up right here, I guess I'll call it chorus number 2. Because like I said, the song structure here is very different from what you usually hear in a power metal band. But this sort of vocal refrain coming up right here, it's pretty much chorus number 2, and it's pretty much the best fucking thing ever. Like, just listen to this fucking part. So fucking good. Give me a second, I think I gotta clean up after that. The Apparition, 11 out of 10 song.
The cream of the crop. nobody does it better.
And I don't know how you're supposed to follow up a perfect album like The Spectre Within, but somehow Fate's Warning managed to do it, because 1 year later they dropped the 11 out of 10 album Awaken the Guardian. You heard Fata Morgana from that way at the beginning of the episode. But the whole thing is great, and it starts off with one of the greatest opening tracks of all time.
It's the sorceress, you boob!
Like on the prior album with Traveler in Time, the Sorceress starts out with a very somber, thick with atmosphere sort of intro before those guitars jump in and they hit you with this brilliant ostinato of an intro riff. On the prior album, you kind of had power metal and thrash somewhat sectioned off from each other. In this case, almost every riff on the album is like a seamless, never before done combination of those heavy fucking palm mutes with that very dense, melancholic sort of melody. And it would probably be incredibly hard for anybody but John Arch to sing over, given the degree of rhythmic fluidity inherent to this guitar playing and drumming style. Most of this episode I've been talking about how great John Arch's vocals and Mateos and Aresti and even DiBiase's bass is. Haven't mentioned Steve Zimmerman's drum performance as much. Rest assured, as you're hearing right now, it's fucking exceptionally well done. Just as experimental and adventurous as all of the other performances on this album and in Fate's Warning in this era in general. And we got another one of those weird thrash breaks that only Fate's Warning does this kind of thing. Well, there's plenty of bands that got thrash breaks, but nobody does them the way that Fate's Warning does them. If you down-tuned this riff, played it with the chainsaw guitar tone, it wouldn't sound that out of place on like a Swedish death metal album. It's just so much more unorthodox and complex than what you expect from a power metal band. And yeah, of course, the solo's fucking sick. This piece of dark, harmonized goodness. The Sorceress is a hell of an opening track, but much like with Spectre Within, every song on this album is great, even the ones that people don't talk about as much. Like one of my personal favorite moments, Giants Lore, Heart of Winter. This is probably the apex of Fate's Warning, combining melodiousness with percussive force. Two contrasting elements going on at the same time in the same riff. The way this song in particular is structured, it's almost like classical music. Just really complex, while at the same time being perfectly attuned to this cosmic sense of harmony. I feel like this song isn't mentioned as much because it isn't as much of a John Arch showcase as some of the other songs on the album. It's way more about the riffs with this one. But if you're looking for some crazy John Arch shit, that's all over this fucking album. There's this one part in the song Exodus that's just so fucking nuts. I mean, who else can pull off shit like that but John Arch in 80s Fate's Warning? That shit's crazy. And speaking of Exodus, dude, the fucking chorus on this song. This shit's fucking insane. And this is another one where you're gonna wanna look up the lyrics because they're stupid good. Like, you're not gonna beat Far Beyond the Prophecy, A Tyrant Guardians, Arcana Awaits You. And then look at this fucking, like, almost romantic classical era dance part with these harmonized guitars. You're gonna have a hard time finding this level of command of melody as an art form outside of, like, Beethoven or Mozart or some shit.
안 하더라고요.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
For real. Go get those first 3 Fate's Warning albums, or at least Spectre Within and Awaken the Guardian. And make sure you pick up No Exit while you're at it if you want to hear them go in a much thrashier, more intense direction. Because that album's essential too. It's just that I said pretty much everything I had to say about it 5 years ago. 80s Fate's Warning is undoubtedly some of the most essential metal of any subgenre. And anybody that claims to be into this kind of music really needs to acquaint themselves with this stuff. Hopefully I managed to convince you that over the course of this episode. But hey, even if you hated all that crap, thanks for listening or watching, whatever you did, and I'll see you next time.
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?